Kick it off. So thank you so much for everyone for being here today. We're really thrilled. I think this is just such an important conversation overall for everyone. We have expert panel for the Women's Council peer group, and we're really excited to have this opportunity for people to learn from our experts and really have a continued conversation for something that's so important for the tech ecosystem. So I will kick it off here. And so for those of you that aren't familiar with South Florida Tech Hub, I'm Ashton Adler. I'm the Director of Talent Engagement for Tech Hub. So I'll give a brief overview and then a little bit of housekeeping for the day so that you all can know what to expect. So for those that aren't familiar with South Florida Tech Hub, we're the only regional nonprofit in South Florida that continues to promote. Our whole mission is to build the tech ecosystem and continue to build upon the incredible things that are happening here. We have 4 core pillars. So we have talent, which is what I oversee. So we work with institutions from K through 12 to higher ed boot camps and so on and so forth. And then we also have community, brand, and startups. So the great thing about Tech Hub is that we have corporate members all the way from Office Depot, FPL, City Furniture, all the way down to startups. So it's really important to us. We're all really passionate about promoting the tech ecosystem. And so we're thrilled to have you all here. We will also put the information in the website, not only for Tech Hub, but also too for our events. And those events include Tech Hub specific events and also our partner events. And our partner events are also for our members. We have over 175 members and corporate members and also and strategic partners. So we're thrilled to have everyone today. What we will be doing from the perspective of having this, how this meeting will run, I'll be monitoring the chat, and also too, I'll be monitoring the waiting room as well. So we'll be able to admit everyone that does have an actual name. We don't any longer, if someone doesn't put their name in, we do not admit them based on previous experiences. So we're really happy. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here today. If you do have questions, pop them into the chat and we will have time for question and answer at the end. And we also will be kicking it off with a poll as well. And I am going to pass it along to Brittany Fox and also to the panelists, and we'll go ahead and jump right in and get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashton. Excited for this conversation today. And Victoria just put in the poll in the chat. So if you want to go ahead and open that link and start filling it out while we do some quick intros. And so I am your moderator today. I am Brittany Fox. I am the CEO and co-founder of Focus GTS. And I also serve as the chair of the Women's Council here at South Florida Tech Hub. And I'm really excited to be here and to lead this important conversation about what it means to command the room as a woman in technology. Changing the face of technology is something I'm deeply passionate about, both as a founder in the IT staffing space and as someone who's dedicated to helping women not just enter tech, but thrive in this industry. And today's panel is going to be packed with powerhouse women. I'm excited to introduce them right away, who each command the room. They've led teams and shaped the industry in their own way. And before we dive in, go ahead and fill out that form because we want to know who's in the room, and it'll help us on how we're going to answer these questions today because we want to make sure that we can serve everyone that's here. So go ahead and fill in that poll. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists. We have 3 amazing powerhouse ladies. So I'm actually going to have them give a brief intro, 60 seconds, a little bit about their career and why this conversation is so important to them. So Tamecka, I'm going to have you kick us off, and then Cathy and also Mariah. So Tamecka, if you can go ahead and kick us off with a quick intro.
Sure. Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for this amazing opportunity to be part of such an important conversation. I'm honored to be included with the esteemed panelists. And thank you to those who took the time to log in. We know time is the only non-renewable resource, so we don't take it lightly. My name is Tamecka McKay. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the City of Fort Lauderdale. I'm going on 3 years in this role. Prior to that, I worked for the Broward County School Board as the Enterprise Infrastructure Manager for about 4 years, and prior to that, 15 years at the town of Davie, starting as a tech and moving on all the way up to information systems manager. I have a master's degree in public administration from FIU, currently pursuing my doctorate in public administration with the focus on servant leadership and public sector tech. I'm sure we'll get to talk about that, but many of you know that IT, the way it was 20 years ago, is not the way it is now. So bringing those soft skills and emphasizing that servant leadership and really empowering teams to grow, I think leaders who capitalize on that are going to be the ones who will make the difference. So again, happy to be here and looking forward to this very, very exciting conversation.
Great. Thanks so much, Tamecka. All right, Cathy, over to you.
Thanks, Brittany. So my name is Cathy Miron. I'm the CEO of eSilo, and I'm on a headset, so hopefully you guys can hear me well. You're gonna give me a thumbs up. Excellent.
Perfect.
So we are a data backup and cybersecurity company. We primarily help small to mid-sized organizations keep themselves secure, get themselves compliant, and ensure that they have a robust backup and disaster recovery strategy to keep their operations going. I've been the CEO for about 6 or 7 years now. I actually acquired this company back in 2018, so I had a unique path to CEO-ness. Prior to that, I spent 15 years at GE, at the time at least, a large Fortune 10 company, and I worked in a variety of different areas. I spent 9 years as an IT auditor, so I sort of think like an auditor, and I bring that into the consulting work that we do. But I can tell you that having been in a very large multinational conglomerate, there's a lot of things around regulations and compliance that smaller organizations don't understand. And so a lot of what we end up doing is helping to make that translation and help those businesses transition to serve enterprise clients and meet robust regulations so that they can thrive. So happy to be here.
Amazing, exciting, perfect. I'm going to head over to Mariah, our last panelist. If you can give us a quick intro and then we'll kick off this conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. So I'm Mariah West. I'm CEO at VIB. VIB is a B2B demand generation company. And what we do is really simple. We specialize in helping tech companies connect with technical buyers through different marketing techniques. So we help everybody from startup companies that are trying to generate their first leads to billion-dollar market leaders that need a little bit of help generating demand for new products and services. So I'd say if you're a tech company who needs demand generation support, definitely check us out. I've been in the role of CEO here at VIB for 1.5 years at this point. Before that, I led marketing at VIB, and I've been in marketing leadership for a few decades now. Before I was here at VIB, I've led marketing teams in cybersecurity companies and disaster recovery companies. I was on the vendor side. I've worked mostly in software companies, and I've been really fortunate to lead some very dynamic global teams, work with private equity, work with VC-backed environments, and be a part of 2 successful acquisitions. So lots of experience in a very kind of noisy and competitive tech space. I'm based in the Boston area, but VIB does have a strong presence in Florida. So we've been a part of the Tech Hub group for a few years now. And I'd say in general, any topic around empowering leadership development is such a wonderful conversation to have. So I'm excited to be part of the conversation today and hopefully give some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And as you can see, as I mentioned, these are definitely some powerhouse ladies who've had some incredible experience. And I want to kick the first question off with our theme, our title of this conversation is, what does commanding the room mean to you? And how have you personally cultivated that presence over your career? So let's start with you, Cathy, if you could kick us off.
Sure. It's funny when I hear commanding the room, I think about, you know, the man in a suit at the head of a boardroom table. And so when I hear the word commanding, I sort of think that, you know, you have to be loud and domineering, and that is not at all, that has not been my approach. So those of you who've met me in person, you know that I'm 5'1", so I'm small in stature. I'm Asian by heritage, so I've always looked about 10 years younger than my actual age, which is great now. But I'll tell you that when I was in the boardrooms at GE, interacting with a room of primarily middle-aged men, I was constantly underestimated. And so I had found that sometimes the loud woman in the room isn't always, you know, the best persona. So I have tried to have a commanding leadership presence through knowledge and expertise. So I try to be humble on a personal level, but I try to be very prepared, have a lot of specifics, data, details, and it helps that, you know, in technology, we deal with a lot of data and details, but that has helped me earn the respect of peers. And that has helped me earn and keep a seat at the table when you might otherwise not have thought that the quiet, you know, young woman in the corner had something important to say.
Thank you for sharing that. I love the analogy you gave of what you originally think of and then how you translated that to how you can be that for who you are and show up as the person that you are. So that's great. Mariah, what about you? What does commanding the room mean to you?
It's interesting you said that, Cathy, because I also had like visualizations when I thought about this question. For me, especially as I've gotten older and hopefully a little bit wiser, to me, commanding means confidence in your abilities. It means making your voice heard, having an opinion, not being afraid to share it. But I think with the older, wiser part, commanding for me has meant listening. It's meant providing relevant and valuable information when it makes the most sense. And it means kind of leveraging the collective wisdom of others to bring value to a conversation. And as I thought about visualization of what this word means, people who have the most command aren't necessarily the loudest or the most talkative all the time. Like you said, a lot of times they're the people who just have something important to say that helps move the conversation along or provide vision or direction in a situation when it matters. So for me, it's taken a lot of learning first early in my career to get enough courage to have a voice. And then later in my career, how to learn when to use it, and more importantly, when not to use it. And I think also exposure matters, right? The more exposure you have to different boardrooms and different business situations really helps to give you that knowledge over time, so that you can kind of tweak that and improve your ability to command a conversation.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think all of our introverts got excited about that advice, right? Because I think sometimes we think we have to be loud or we have to say a lot, but sometimes it really is about saying the right thing at the right time. So thank you for sharing that. Tamecka, what about you? What does commanding the room mean, and how have you used that throughout your career?
Sure. Well, I can definitely resonate and appreciate the sentiments of my fellow panelists. It's funny, commanding the room to me, I don't know, I see a strong woman, you know, standing there and everybody looking, you know, with their mouths open. And I'm pretty sure that has happened over time. But you know, commanding the room to me means really the work that you do outside of the room. It's building those relationships, and I believe it was Mariah who said it. You know, being visible. You know, being like in my role as CIO, I don't necessarily have to attend the police graduation ceremony or the fire promotion ceremony or a ribbon cutting for a new business, but I do that because I want to be visible. I want to be there. I want to be known. And by having my presence there, doing all of that work outside of the boardroom, building those relationships, showing interest in what's important to others, to my business units and my other colleagues. Now, when I'm in the room, there's already that relationship and that level of respect and appreciation. So now they want to hear what I have to say. So if I had to answer that, I would say being effective at commanding the room really starts with what you're doing outside of the room.
That's awesome. I don't know if you've read that book, Likeable Badass by Allison. It's Fragile. I'm not sure how to say her last name, but she talks about creating your allies outside of the room too, and showing up, and also making those deposits into other relationships outside. So I love that you brought that up. And so, Cathy, I want to ask you, in your leadership journey, how have you learned to advocate for yourself? Whether that's asking for a promotion, raising your rate if you were on a contract, or owning the different achievements that you've had, because sometimes as a woman, you don't want to seem too proud because then you can come across a certain way, but we also have to advocate for the things that we've accomplished and be able to talk about them. So how have you learned to advocate for yourself throughout your career journey?
I think that in the beginning, when I was in a corporate setting, it was different than what I do now as a business owner. And some of that's maturity and my own growth. In a corporate setting, I would say that my strategy for doing that, I never felt comfortable sort of going and asking for a promotion. So I would ask other people or trusted mentors, hey, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. Do you have advice? And by doing that and asking them for help, I was turning them into allies, as Tamecka was saying. So then they, A, knew what I was looking for, and B, were potentially in a position to advocate for me in rooms that I was not even a part of, right? In HR reviews or other discussions. So that was my strategic sort of back end way of trying to at least make my intentions and desires known to the extent that that would help me. As a business owner, I realize that I have to be the face of the company. I have to be our biggest advocate. No one else is going to go tout our own horn other than our happy customers. So I've had to learn to do that in a different way. And I think just being honest about, hey, here's what we're really good at. And then in situations where there's something that a client needs, and maybe it's a little bit outside of our wheelhouse, also being straightforward about, hey, we really specialize in this, and this other piece, I can bring in a partner. I can, introduce you to somebody else. I think that earns you credibility, and people understanding, well, when she says she's an expert or her company can really do this, they must really be able to knock it out of the park. So again, it's a little bit of an indirect way. And then I guess the last thing I'll say is that in my business owner journey, I waited too long to go out and formally get advice and help. Meaning, I think I waited maybe 3 years before I hired my first business coach, or just coach in general. And I think I started with someone who's probably more of a high performance coach, is what they said. And then I transitioned to someone who was much more of a business specific, business growth coach. And I wish I had done that sooner, because in having dialogue with someone like that, they gave me more confidence to raise my rates, to, put out a price on a proposal that maybe 6 months earlier, I would have been too shy. I would have essentially negotiated with myself to have some kind of lower rate on that project. So sometimes it just takes surrounding yourself with other people who also understand your value and can help give you the confidence to take what you may perceive as a risky leap and start a conversation that you might have been otherwise afraid to start.
Yeah, that's so great too. Like knowing when to use those allies and when to promote yourself. Cause like you said, especially as a business owner, no one's gonna toot your own horn, if you will, except for yourself. And you have to get that message out there. So important. And then also I could talk about hiring the right coach at the right season all day long. It's so key, right? To be able to get you to the next level, especially to do it even quicker. So that's so great. Mariah, do you have maybe a specific example of a time you've negotiated a deal for yourself, or a salary or a rate that is a way that you've advocated for yourself as a woman in technology and throughout your career journey?
Maybe to back into a specific example, I'll build on something Cathy said again, because I think depending on the folks in the audience right now, where you are at in your career, I think most of us understand the concept of like a mentor, somebody who coaches us, provides guidance and feedback. But I don't think as many of us rely on what are considered sponsors, which is more of what Cathy's talking about, where they're not just coaching you, but they're like your internal advocate, and you can confide in them on what your desires are for your next step. And when you're not in the room, there's somebody generally in a higher position than you that can bring your name up in critical conversations. And so going back to your question, there are definitely situations where I was very fortunate to create some excellent sponsors within different organizations who were in higher level positions, not just in my group, but in other groups within the organizations I was within, where they knew where I wanted to take things. And when promotion and job opening conversations happened, they had the opportunity to bring my name up before I even had to. So I would definitely encourage anybody in this conversation to think through who would potentially be a sponsor for me and how could I maybe be transparent with them on some of the ways in which I want to grow my career. But the other thing I would maybe share in this area is something that I think many of us do intrinsically, but something to do more intentionally when you're looking for your next step is first understand what the skills are and the competencies that you need to get to the next step, and then just go ahead and start working on those things. Go ahead and start building them. Go ahead and start exhibiting them. When you are celebrating things and advocating for yourself, focus on over recognition of those skills, because that will also make you a shoo-in for the next opportunity. And then just ask, just share. A lot of us are overthinkers. Don't overthink it. Worst case scenario, you asked and you built skills and you've learned something, right? Like you'll never regret that.
Yeah, that's so great. And I love what you said too about asking to even what would it take to get to that next promotion? Like what skill sets are you looking for in that next role or that next promotion? And what do I need to show? Where I think sometimes the advice has been, oh, come to the meeting and have your list of all the things you've done. But if it wasn't to what to actually get to you to the next level, then maybe it's not going to actually get you the promotion. Well, it's great to talk about those things. It might not get you the salary or the increase you're looking for. So ask is the key and to find out the information. So Tamecka, I'm curious if you have a specific example about a time you did a negotiation for yourself, or how have you continued to advocate throughout your career to grow?
So advocating for myself has not come easy. As Mariah said, I'm one of those overthinkers. And sometimes, you know, there is that struggle with the imposter syndrome and do I really belong? And, you know, do I really have what it takes? So working on your confidence and working on your skill set and polishing yourself and building that's a never ending journey. You know, when you, Brittany, when you introduced us in the beginning and you said experts, you know, I kind of said, you know, I don't really think of myself as an expert because I'm always learning. Every single day, there's something new to learn. There's something to improve. There's something to work on. So I think that's a challenge for many women, including myself. But what I have learned is getting feedback from other people. I mean, I've had folks, whether they be my superiors or my colleagues or even you know, my people that report to me tell me, hey, you're great at this and you did this and you inspired me to do this and you did that. And it's like, wow, yeah, I am pretty good. So getting that feedback from the people around you is helpful. Working on that and improving your confidence is helpful. And I would say being confident with sprinkled with a little humility goes a long way, because I think there's always opportunities to learn and grow. And people appreciate that. They appreciate when you can be transparent and vulnerable, but also, you know, exhibit what you can bring to the table. So one specific example I'd like to share where I guess this is really the first time that I've advocated for myself, and I was scared. When I was first offered the CIO role, the salary that I was offered, I didn't feel comfortable negotiating. I accepted it. And in retrospect, I don't regret that, because at the time it was my first full-time CIO role. I had been acting an intern before, but had not been a full-time role. And I was fortunate enough that I was appointed. I didn't have to compete for it. I didn't have to interview for it. At that time, the leader saw something in me and said, hey, you know, if you're interested, we will put you here and this is what we will offer. So I felt like, hey, they're taking a chance on me. So I don't want to be greedy. I'm not going to negotiate. So I accepted the offer. But after 1 year, in 1 year, I showed, I mean, I had moved the needle and it took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But after 1 year, I moved the needle and now I felt confident enough to negotiate an increase after that 1 year, because now I'm not telling you what I bring to the table. You've seen it. I've shown it, and you're no longer taking a risk or taking a chance on me. You know what you're getting. And at that time, I was going to negotiate a 5% increase, which is over what the standard was. And I was going to negotiate 7%, but I would accept a 5%. And I spoke to, and this is where it's important to have mentors and coaches. I spoke to someone, they said, well, if you want 7%, then you should start with 10%. And then if you get the 10%, great. If you don't, then you bring in the 7%. So I was a little nervous, but I went in and I said, I'd like 10%. And lo and behold, I got the 10%. So the mentoring and the coaching, and the building of the confidence is really what made me ask for the 10%, because I would have been happy with 5%. So I was going with the 7%. So having that, the mentoring and coaching, and also being able to demonstrate, hey, this is not what I say I can do. I've demonstrated this and I've shown this. That gives a level of confidence where you can advocate for yourself. And I'm getting better at it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, and congratulations on that accomplishment. I know we've kind of brought up the words perfectionism, overthinking, and confidence. These are all things I think a lot of us have struggled with, or have worked to build these things in us, to whether that's the confidence building or overcoming the perfectionism. Tamecka, what practical tools or routines would you advise the members listening today on how they could overcome and build that confidence in themselves to be able to have those type of conversations?
Well, there's a lot of books out there that help. I mean, some books that I've really gained a lot of wisdom from: Brené Brown, Simon Sinek, Gladwell, Maxwell. So I think educating yourself and building your tool set. So, the books, the reading, that's one tool. Attending conferences and seminars. And, I applaud all the women and men who found value in being here today. This is knowledge. Knowledge is power. And sometimes it doesn't fall in your lap. You have to be assertive about seeking it. There's an app called Blinkist, Blinkest, and it's a great app because it gives you like these snippets of books. So you go through like a full book in, maybe 10 minutes. And obviously, if it's a book that resonates with you, you can go get the book and read the full book. But I've been able to cover a lot of material in a very short amount of time. I listened to it on my way to work. Obviously, mentor coaches, if you see someone and you would like to be where they are, strike up a conversation with them and see how you can, align yourself, even offer them a steak dinner. Nobody turns down a steak dinner, just to pick their brain. So just building up that tool set. And then, as I mentioned before, getting the feedback from others. That's been very powerful for me, because you never know how your actions are inspiring someone else. Not everybody will tell you, but if you open yourself up to receiving that feedback, it can be very powerful, very affirming, and very instrumental in, number one, building your confidence and knowing, hey, this is an area where I'm really strong in. This is a strong point. This is my superpower. Let me lean into it. So those are the tools that I've used, and that's what I would suggest.
And that's awesome, because I would say probably 80% of our negotiations and building that confidence comes from our psychology and our mindset, right? And especially in technology, sometimes maybe we focus on getting that next skill set or learning what is required on the job descriptions, but we forget maybe about spending some time on the skill set of mindset and investing in things like the books and the podcast and the conferences. So I love that. Mariah, would you have anything else to add to that specific of ways that the audience could work to build their confidence when it comes to even having a hard conversation or showing up for a really important meeting?
Yeah, for sure. And I do just want to take this opportunity to also just emphasize that salary negotiations when you do a job change or when you get a new job are your lowest hanging fruit to get what you need. Like that is such a logical place to negotiate. So if you've never negotiated for yourself before and you're on the market for a new job and you get an offer, like try it. Just ask for something a little bit more to gain that muscle for yourself, because that is probably the easiest place to do salary negotiations. But back to your question, yeah, a couple of quick tips that work well for me, and everybody's different, right? Like my husband can go into a room of 1,000 people and wing it and come out and be like, "Da, da, 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 da." Like that is not me. Okay, I'm not doing that. So some tips from my experience and who I am: research, prep, like to the point where I feel confident in myself going into a conversation because I have well-rounded knowledge to manage different outcomes from that conversation. And don't be afraid if you really want to go so far as to even like script scenarios. Like have a little cheat sheet in front of you or write some things down so that you can make sure that you consume things both written and through knowledge, or even speak to yourself. That also can really help. And then I think my best tip here is maybe a little unconventional, which is it is absolutely okay to not know something. So when you're going into a high stakes situation, I always coach my team, hey, don't like make it up on the spot, or don't word salad something, or don't react because you think you need to react. If you're unsure, just say, hey, I'll get back to you on that. Hey, great question. Let me circle back around to it at the end. Whatever is natural to the conversation, it's totally all right to go into a high stakes situation and not be able to address everything.
Yeah, that's great. And that's so funny. My husband's literally the same way, like can just walk in, wing it, feel great, and he crushes it. Where me, the way I get my confidence and can show up fully is by the preparation and really doing my research and feeling like I know I might not know everything, but I know enough to be dangerous, if you will, and to give me the inner confidence. And for everyone that might look a little different, right, of how much research. And I'm curious, is there a balance of also doing that research, but not, because sometimes as women, we can over prepare or that perfectionist kicks in. Have you found you've struggled with that, or what advice might you give, Mariah, to anyone who struggles with that over preparing?
Yeah, for sure. It's a good point. I think everybody has their limit. And I would say that, at least for me personally, just go to the place in which you feel a sense of comfort in the topic. Like, I think a good way to kind of hypothetically test yourself is like if you ran into somebody at a coffee shop and they asked you a random question about that thing, would you be able to say something confidently around it? You can over prepare, which not only wastes your time, but also puts you in information overload. And then when you're put in a high pressure situation, your blood pressure is rising, you're asking for a raise or whatever your situation is, you like error out because you flooded yourself with too much information. So just give yourself like a little, just enough to give yourself a little bit of confidence and be capable of going into that conversation with some level of preparation.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And Cathy, what about you? What would you recommend on the practical tools or tips for building that confidence?
So I think that we all have the same personality, because to me, I have to prep, and I just the way I would describe it is I have to sit with the data, whatever it is. Whether I'm giving a presentation, I have to like refresh myself on my slides and what's the key point that I'm trying to get across with each one of these to remember my flow. And frankly, for me, I think it's less about studying new material. It's more about bringing it to the surface and storing it in RAM, as opposed to like cold storage that I haven't thought about it for a while. So that's my way of preparing for a high stakes situations. As I get myself organized, I know the key points I want to make. I try to anticipate some of the major questions or objections or things that might happen. And then I've got all of that in recent memory. I do agree with you can over prepare, but I think that for each one of us, we'll know, when you have enough. And I would say strive to get to just barely enough, because if you feel like you've totally thoroughly done it, you've probably done, 2 or 10 hours more than you needed to. Another thing that I've found useful, just as a real practical thing, if any of you do time tracking, If you know that there's a certain type of activity that you get like really sucked into. So whether that's like, for me, sometimes it's preparing a client proposal. I'll spend so much time researching stuff for them. I have to remind myself that if I put this amount of effort into every single one, right, a lot of them don't hit. So I track my time and then I look back on it when I'm done and I say, okay, could I have done that in half the amount of time? So I challenge myself and watch the clock for things that I know I tend to dwell on too much when you hit this point of diminishing returns, because the last 25 to 33% of time you spend on something, you might have been able to get away, without that extra effort.
Yeah, that's great. I like what you said about the time tracking. And two, also once you've gotten to a certain point of you're constantly having these type of discussions or meetings, you know how they flow. Maybe you prep 10 minutes versus their traditional hour.
Yeah.
But if it's something new, you got to invest more time so that you do feel that confidence. So that's really great practical advice and application. And Mariah, so I know a lot of times we get asked about women early in their career and they're looking to see how they can either make a difference or ways that they can have influence in their career early on, but maybe they're not at that manager level or they quote don't feel like they have that influence. What advice would you give to someone early in their career of how they can go ahead and start to build that influence?
Sure. And I think this applies for anybody early in their career, no matter who you are. And I love this question. I actually get this a lot from my team who don't manage people, because I think that it's kind of a misconceived notion that you need to have formal authority to delegate and influence other people. So if you think about influence, what is it? Like, influence is just your capacity to have an effect on somebody. So from my perspective, you build influence in a couple of very specific ways. The first tip I would give to anybody is, number one, just like understand the person you're talking to. What matters to them? What are they here for? What are they gold on? What are their priorities? Because anytime you can craft a conversation and need a request around their language and what matters to them, you're going to make a bigger impact. So that's first, is just spend extra time understanding their role, and then you'll be able to get the most out of them. Number two, influence is communication. It's about clear and effective communication around what your needs are, why they're critical for the business, why that person needs help, why you need help, how they can help you, when you need the help. A lot of my team, when they come to me with this kind of question, it's because they asked for support, maybe from a peer, and then they didn't get it, or the peer said that they would help and then they didn't come through. And part of that starts from clear communication on what you need and when you need it, and what your expectation is of the other person in that reciprocity. But the third tip I would have in this area as well is just back to some of our earlier comments on being comfortable advocating for yourself. The more you show your strengths, and as you show your strengths, you're recognizing others, the more successful you're going to be in influencing people, because it's natural that most people want to be associated with other people who are rising stars and who celebrate and recognize others. So whether or not it's a conscious or a subconscious thing, if you're constantly doing that, supporting your peers, recognizing your peers, and if you're a rock star in your role, people will want to support you. And that can help you drive influence into other people, whether or not they're peers or even managers or people in other departments who are ahead of you.
Yeah, that's so great of understanding too what is their need and how can you add value early and going above and beyond. And people want to be associated with people who are, as you mentioned, the rising stars. So such great advice. Tamecka, what about you? What would you recommend to someone early in their career and how can they build that influence?
Yeah, great stuff, Mariah. Good. I can relate to everything that you said. Well, from my experience, I can't say that I ever aspired to be in a leadership role. I think there were people who saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and I'm thankful for those people, men and women, have advocated for me, and help me see things that I didn't see in myself. So if I talk about earlier in my career, I can't necessarily say that I was preparing for that, but I was always told a couple of things. One, I was told, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. So even when I was just a simple help desk technician, had to wear knee pads for, building cables and going in the ceiling and whatsoever. Whenever I got the chance to, I dressed and carried myself in a way that I would if I were in a leadership position. I also took leadership courses before I ever had a leadership position, a leadership role. So I would say don't take it for granted that maybe you're not where you want to be, but you could still empower yourself and educate yourself with some of those different skill sets that may or may not materialize in your future. And I would say that they probably will. The other thing I would share is don't be afraid to volunteer. My first opportunity to lead a group was through a volunteer. I volunteered for something that nobody else wanted. It was the strategic planning committee at a former organization. And everybody said, oh, they just given that role to, whoever they don't like. And, I volunteered. I first started out as the co-chair, and then I became the chair. And it really allowed me to put my leadership skills and my propensity for that on display, which no one would ever have seen with me just being a systems engineer. And by doing that, I kind of really inadvertently broadcast and advertise, hey, this kid, has some potential. And from there, I was offered another role, and that became the stepping stone for my career progression. I definitely believe in seeking first to understand before being understood. I think it was Mariah who mentioned that. You will always have people that will see things differently. And the more you can relate to them, the more you can seek first to understand, the more you can really get to speak to their language and where they are, the more you're going to influence them and impact them. And really, that's what leadership is about, whether you have the title or not. It's about influence. I mean, I'm sure many of you have gone into organizations where you see who has the title of leader, but who everybody really is following. So I think that's powerful. And then again, building on what Mariah said about helping others, success, it attracts more success. And there's a scripture in the Bible that says, he who refreshes others, he himself will be refreshed. So when you promote others, when you advocate for others, when you lift others, when you celebrate others, that's going to come back to you. So I think that's an important concept that really has been beneficial for me in my career.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Cathy, what about you when it comes to advice for women or our male allies in the room early in their career? How can they continue to build that influence and continue to elevate themselves throughout their career?
So when I was at GE, I used to run a program of early career talent right out of school. So this was their first 2 years out of school in the company. And we did a lot of mentoring on all aspects of sort of professional behavior, leadership, development. And the two things I told them is, if you want to be a person of influence and sort of earn the respect of your peers, you need to be someone who brings solutions, not problems. Right? No boss, no peer, nobody wants to hear that something's broken. They want to hear your ideas to fix it. And so back with what Tamecka said about volunteer, like raise your hand. If you see something that could be better, point it out, raise your hand to be the person who leads the implementation of the solution. And a lot of times you'll find that people will be willing to invite you in to the smaller room conversations or into conversations with people who are more senior to be a part of the solving of the problem. So I think that that's key. And then I guess the only other thing I would add to what these ladies have already said is relationships. I think that at a more junior level in an organization, it can sometimes feel very competitive, so you're trying to showcase your skills compared to maybe others. And I would strongly encourage you to build strong peer relationships, because influence is all about being an ally to somebody else. But also, if you have a strong interpersonal relationship, if somebody feels that you genuinely care about them and their family or the things that they care about, that's going to bring you closer together. And so in times of conflict or anything that might be more controversial, that gives you a common bridge. And so I have found that, the way to influence is through trust and sort of back office or side conversations. And you can't do that if you don't have a very strong working relationship with your peers. So that's sort of very foundational.
Yeah, I love what you said about being the solution, because oftentimes when you're early in your career and you're that person, even if you don't, your solution's not the answer, but you came up with the idea, it shows that you're willing to help. And who knows, that idea might spur a whole of what actually is the solution. So don't be afraid early to speak up and to bring those potential solutions, because you never know. And if you continue to do that, I know that the leaders in the room are going to be like, when they have a problem, they'll look to that person to be able to be like, you know what, they're always willing to help. You know, maybe they don't have that skill set yet, but they're always willing to put it in the work. So that's such great advice. And I
the
know,
other
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I
Yeah.
was just gonna say one more thing. The other thing that has the added benefit of it's showing the higher ups that not only can you do the work that you have on your plate, you're capable of more. So they
Mhm.
see and understand that you can actually take a step up and take on more scope or take on more responsibility. And if you want a promotion, if you want to be influential, you have to show that you can do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know we have a little over 10 minutes left, and I have a live document with some questions that have been coming in through the audience. There's some really great ones here. So, and if you have any more, put them in the chat. We'll get them on the sheet and see if we can get some of these answered. And whoever wants to jump in on these, since they're kind of throughout the audience, if you feel like you've dealt with this, I'm sure we probably dealt with a lot of these, but so we can try to get through a couple of these. But this question, I think, happens quite often, and I'd love to hear what you ladies have to say about this one. Is what advice do you have for someone who constantly gets interrupted in meetings, especially by more senior voices?
Well, I don't think there's a cookie cutter. I mean, it really depends on the level of comfort, the culture, and but if it were me, let's say if that happens, if it's by one person or multiple people, I would if it's one person, I would probably invite that person out for a steak and just have a conversation and start asking questions. What I've found is sometimes when you come off just saying, hey, this bothers me, or I didn't like this, people become defensive. But starting the conversation off with a question like, hey, I'm kind of looking to get, more FaceTime or more table time. What would be your suggestion? And sometimes appealing to people's egos, making them think that you're looking to them for advice, might help them be more sensitive and be more aware of it, and even advocate for you. I can share a quick story, and I know we're running on time, but I was in a meeting, and at the time I was a manager, I wasn't a director, but I had a solution, and I was brought into the senior leadership meeting. And one of the other directors said, Tameka's really good at taking notes, so you can document the notes for this meeting. And it didn't even occur to me at the time. I was just happy to be there. So I was getting ready to take notes. And the most senior person in the room said, wait a minute, Tameka's not here to take notes. She's here to talk about the solution. If you want someone to take notes, you call your admin. And I was like, yeah, what he said. So I think also, again, building those relationships, and you'd be surprised, you might find other people will advocate for you, but there's a lot of different factors that would dictate how I would go about that.
Brittany, I do actually have a quick tip, because I have run into many of these situations early in my career in one of the cultures I was in. I think first, it's important in those situations to just assume the best. Like, you do have to assume they're not intentionally doing it. So stay calm and just be consistent about contributing. But two things come to mind. The first one is, it is totally acceptable without pointing that person out for you to set some boundaries in the actual live situation. And the easiest way that I think you can do that is by simply setting the stage on what you're going to say in that conversation. Something like, hey, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to walk through XYZ, whatever it is. And for the sake of time, will everybody hold their questions or comments until the end? Does that sound reasonable? And you can do that in a group setting. It's non-confrontational, but it sets your boundary that you want dedicated time to express yourself. And then if that person still does it, Definitely don't call them out in a group setting. That's never a good idea. But it is totally reasonable if it's consistent for you to have a separate conversation with them separately. Like take them one-on-one and be like, hey, I just want to let you know that this is like the 5th, 6th, 7th, whatever it's time. You've interrupted me in this conversation. Can we talk about that a little bit? That is totally acceptable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, just to add real quick, is that too, if you do get interrupted when that person's finished, say, oh, that's great, and bring your point back. Like, don't feel like you have to completely not continue the conversation. If you were in the middle of something and the subject got changed, you can always bring it back up too, and then have that side conversation with that person. And again, there's a lot here, right? It depends on your culture. Is this a recurring person? There's a lot here, but these are just some ways. But I would recommend to maybe talk to someone one-on-one about your specific story and what's happening. So our next question is so this one. So how to have, how to have confidence when transitioning into tech from another industry. I know I get this question a lot, like, how do I enter tech if I haven't been, but how do you have the confidence? How do you get that opportunity when you don't have that background?
I'm working with someone on my team right now who we're helping transition into tech. And the advice that I gave them in the interview process was continue to do your own homework, right? So whether that's taking courses online, watching YouTube videos, reading books, studying, getting hands-on, depending on whatever it is that they're trying to learn. But to do that and to do that on their own time, while also as they look to make that transition, being very upfront about what their skills and capabilities are with the prospective hiring manager. So the reason we were able to have this very transparent conversation was he came to me and said, look, I really want to make this transition. Here's why, here's what I'm trying to do. Are you willing to take someone like me, knowing that I bring this other skill? Right. So I had gotten this advice once early in my career from someone in HR who said, never take a job where you aren't comfortable that you can absolutely knock it out of the park for at least 50% of the scope. So, there's got to be some other skill set that you can bring. So whether it's a operational process type role or some kind of strength that then gets you into a technology company, so you can be around other people in technology, you can learn, you can have additional opportunities to shadow and apprentice, and then ultimately take on responsibilities and be involved in tech projects, but maybe you're not, being a software developer on day one. I think getting exposure to tech is a great way to start, even if maybe the day-to-day responsibilities are a little less techy.
That's great. I think getting surrounded, right? You got to get in the room first and be able to have that opportunity. Because I know oftentimes it's really hard to initially first break in, but maybe it's not your ideal job, but it's an area you can deliver and you can get that exposure that you need to continue to ask that question. What would it take? What skills do I need to learn? And then you can surround yourself by the right people. So that's really great. We have about 5 minutes left here. So one of the other questions that we have here is, and this comes back to one of our discussion points earlier, is how do you balance being assertive without being labeled too aggressive? Especially in a male-dominated industry, how can we balance that advocating for ourselves without getting the label of too aggressive? Tamecka, you're shaking your head.
That's a really good question, because there's been times where I've been good at that, and there's been times when I've been not so good at that. And then also being African American, there's kind of a stereotype about the angry Black woman. So sometimes I have to be sensitive to that as well. And again, reading the room, knowing the culture, knowing the environment, knowing your audience. There's some colleagues and business partners that I can be more direct with, and there's others where I've had to soften my message a little bit, because I have had that label. She was aggressive. And there's been times where I've questioned, if maybe I look different and I was of a different gender, would I be looked at as being a leader, being assertive and confident? Or when I do that, it comes off as aggressive and assertive. So I will, be very transparent in the beginning. I took offense to it and it bothered me. And I would try to adjust my personality to not fall into that. But, you know, as I've gotten older and gotten more confident in my career and what I bring to the table, besides the fact that there is a time and a place for everything, that's also in Ecclesiastics. There's a time to be strong and stand up for what you need. And then there's a time to be gentle, right? And to be diplomatic, right? So that comes with experience and comes with wisdom. But I've also accepted the fact that, you know, I'm just not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And I'm not going to always fit in the mold that people think I should be in. And as long as I'm doing what's right, as long as, you know, and I do that self-evaluation, that was my mind in the right place? Was my heart in the right place? Were my intentions in the right place? I do that. If I can say yes, then I'll take whatever label you want to give me.
I want to add to what Tamecka said. I think that you can say a lot of things, and when you do it with a smile, it changes how that is perceived. And I know that as women, there's an expectation of sort of how we are socially conducting ourselves. Whether you agree with it or not, it's there. And so I find that if you smile and I make an effort to come across as warm and approachable, then even if I'm delivering a tough message, it gets perceived in a positive way. Whereas I've met women who are amazing, but they just don't smile as much. They just don't demonstrate the stereotypical female behaviors, and people find it, men and women find it a little off-putting. So again, you can't necessarily change it, but maybe just embrace it.
I'm just going to add one thing that is very easy to say, but is very hard to do. And if I were to give any advice on this topic, it would be to be authentic to who you are. Embrace your strengths, right? Just assert yourself. There are boisterous, outgoing leaders and there are quiet, introverted leaders. Both are equally successful. I myself have been labeled as being very aggressive when I was like in those early years of management, and I didn't know any better. And I was trying to model myself off of these very strong and aggressive male leaders that I was in the tech space. And I kind of like tried on different management personalities. And I would say, like, don't be afraid to try different things, but you need to try different things that are authentic to your true self. There's this great quote that I reference all the time that I can't put my finger on who said it because it changes who it's attributed to all the time, but it's what other people think of me is none of my business. So one thing I've learned is to not over-rotate your actions based on fear of being labeled in a certain way. And at the end of the day, what people respect is people who are themselves. So prioritize sharing your thoughts consistently first. Get good at that. Even if maybe you say it the wrong way or you're not smiling, or just get good at sharing your thoughts first. And then once you've conquered that, start to reflect and get a sense for what's the approach I'm taking, and am I getting the best outcomes out of how I'm saying things, or do I need to tweak that to get better outcomes?
Amazing. Well, thank you so much to our panelists. This was an incredible conversation, and I'm sure we're walking away with many practical tools and ways that we can continue to advocate for ourselves and advance our career. And we hope you can join us for another South Florida Tech Hub event soon. Our next Women's Council event will be on April 25th. It's going to be posted soon. We're really excited about this. It's going to be live in person. So stay tuned for more details, but have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, guys.
Everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.